What's up everybody, Couch Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down the Valorant 4.08 tier list because a lot has changed. First off, we got some nerfs to some key characters. Other characters are rising through the ranks and are slated to be even more powerful going forward, and of course, Fade just got introduced into the game, so there's a lot we got to talk about and we'll break it down, but the GameLeap website is the best place to pop off and dominate. We have helped thousands of people climb to Immortal and beyond, and we can help you as well, so do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below. Now we're going to start this list from the bottom up, and we only have one character in the F tier right now, and it's Phoenix. Now, everyone knew that this was coming. Phoenix has been very underpowered for a very long time, and I think that every single person wants a Phoenix buff in one way or another, and why Riot hasn't buffed this character, I'm not entirely sure, but I definitely hope to see some Phoenix buffs soon, so he rises not only in pro play, but in ranked play as well. But if you have any ideas to buff the character and make him good, let us know down below. Now next up we have C tier, characters that are definitely playable in certain situations, but they do need more power added to their kit, and they ultimately are left a little bit lacking, and that's Killjoy, Cypher, and Astra. First off, let's talk about the easy one, Astra. Astra is just being outclassed by every controller in the game right now. After she received those colossal nerfs, she is just not a really good quote-unquote dome smoke option, and Brimstone and Omen both eat up her pick rate completely. And while you do see a team here or there try Astra, in ranked play in particular, she sees almost no play, and some small buffs would probably really help this character. Now, next up, of course, is Killjoy and Cypher, and these characters have just become weaker and weaker as patches gone on. There's a lot more competitive options, and we even have pro players like Ye saying this on Twitter, quote, "In my opinion, Sentinels in general need a bit of a buff. Killjoy, Cypher, and even Sage to an extent are becoming pretty niche. It's too easy to bait out the utility or get it past via movement abilities, plus entire ults and setups, Killjoy and Cypher, can be broken by 4 different agents with 1 to 2 200 credit abilities." And primarily, I agree with Ye. I do think that especially Killjoy and Cypher are way too underpowered now, and there is just a lot of ways to mess up, for example, a lockdown or break all the utility with a simple lineup or a simple bit of utility. So I would like to see some sort of changes to buff these characters, and just like before, if you have any suggestions, let me know down below. Now, before we get into the B tier, I do want to talk about Reyna, and I'm putting her in her own tier in this video, the Reyna tier. And the reason is I make this tier list by combining ranked pick rate and pro play, but Reyna is the weirdest, most differentiating character because she sees like 1% pro play and then something like 60% ranked play. So she would be an S tier ranked agent, but an F tier pro agent. And I do think that she really falls off, especially when you get to Immortal Plus. There are other better options for your team. Unless you're like Radiant playing in Immortal, then you're just smurfing on them hoes. But Reyna is a character that when we're talking about purely ranked play, she's S tier by far. But, you know, for that pro play, she is just super, super underpowered. And I think that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you understand that just because she doesn't see pop-off plays in pro play does not make her anything less than a top tier agent for ranked, especially for under Immortal. Next up, we gotta talk about the B tier. B tier's pretty stacked, and there's a lot of characters that we have to hit. Let's talk about the weaker ones in the B tier first, Brim, Sage, and Breach. Now, Brim has slightly lost the battle to Omen, who has eaten most of the Dome Smoker pick rate. He still sees play on certain maps like Bind, and he is still powerful, but Omen does a little bit more and does it a little bit better. Doesn't mean you can't play the character, because the difference is very little between Omen and Brim, if I'm being honest. Next up is Sage, a character that we already talked about being a little bit underpowered. She is more powerful than her other Sentinel counterparts, specifically Cypher and Killjoy. But besides very niche scenarios and certain teams, she's not seeing that much play, and I do think that maybe some slight buffs could make this character a little bit better. But for now, she's a fine character to pick in ranked, and I do think that she's a little bit better in ranked than she is in pro play. Next up, we gotta talk about Breach, which is a legitimately good character. The only problem with Breach is that he's mainly only playable on freaking Fracture. You could make an argument for Haven as well, but he's not a character that you can just one trick and play on every map. because he's not fit for every map. He's a character that really fits perfectly with Fracture, and that's why in pro play he sees like almost 100% pick rate on that map. And while you can play him other places, typically I would suggest actually just having other initiator alternatives that you play on some of the maps that Breach is not good in. Now, the next three in the B tier, at the very top of the B tier, are the characters with the most potential to disrupt this tier list. And the first one is Neon. Neon recently got some minor changes in 4.08, but Optic has shown that Neon is already good. And while Neon has looked pretty underpowered for a while, it just showed the right use of the character in order to realize that the character is actually a lot more powerful than she seems. And she's not just a ranked pub stomper, she seems to have legitimate counter strategies towards a lot of the normal setups that pro teams can have, and I do think that she's a very interesting anti-meta pick that actually could develop into a much more meta pick, especially on the back of some of these duelist nerfs, making a lot more space for an aggressive entry type duelist. So I'm curious to see where she'll move from here, and I do think that she has the capability to rise the ranks. Next up is Yoru. As players are getting better and better at Yoru, it's becoming apparent that this character is insane at entering. For ranked play in the right hands, he's obviously completely nuts, but for pro play, there is a lot of potential involved with this character, especially with well-crafted executes by your team. I do think that Yoru has the capability to rise to one of the top duelists in the game, and he's actually been on that path slowly. I'm definitely gonna have to keep an eye on this character because there is potential here, but we're gonna have to see how creative some of the top tier teams and players get with this agent. Last up in the B tier is Fade, the new character on the block. I think a lot of people initially thought that Fade would be overpowered, and while I did think she was strong, after playing against her, I realized that she is not the end-all be-all initiator. Most of her utility can be shot. Even when you're detained, that doesn't mean you can't just hit a headshot, and of course, being deafened and being decayed definitely sucks. If you play around potential flanks and focus on hitting your shots, there's still a good chance you can win a lot of your duels. While I'm not saying the character is bad, she seemed a lot more broken initially than she ended up being. And while I do think that she'll see substantial pro play, Sova still looks like the go-to initiator, the one that reigns supreme right now, and the nerfs that hit Sova are not enough to put Fade into the A tier. Now, next up, we do gotta talk about the A tier, and the bottom of the A tier has to be Skye. Skye is still a very powerful character, and she's going to pick up some pick rate somewhat because Sova got slightly nerfed, even though I think Sova's still better. That doesn't mean that she's not going to become a slightly more compelling option, but now she has to kind of compete with Fade, so it's a little bit of give and take, so ultimately she stays in the bottom of the A tier. Raze is a very strong character. She's a really good role filler on certain maps. While not every map is going to work perfectly for Raze, I do think that on the maps that she's good, she is indispensable in what she does, very powerful, and I think she's in a really good spot right now, definitely deserving of A tier. Next up is KO, and KO is really strong. I think he's one of the best characters in the game right now, and he's only priced to become better the more abilities are added to the game. Having an ability turn-off button is so damn powerful, and as pro players and ranked players alike get much better at the character, KO stocks are rising incredibly quickly. And I do think that if you want a character to whip out and be very disruptive and powerful and ranked, look no further than KO, one of the best options on this tier list and my personal favorite for this patch. Now, next up is Viper and Omen. They are neck and neck in the A tier because they almost have the same pick rate in pro play, about 40% both of them. Now, if they were combined, they would be S tier, right? But they both bring different things to the table. And while Omen, Brimstone, and Astra are all in the Dome Smoker category, and Omen is the key winner there, Viper is in her own category that is irreplaceable, needed on maps like Breeze. So, of course, she's always going to be part of the meta, but that doesn't mean she's going to be played on every single map, even if she is S tier on the maps she's needed in. Now, last up at the very top of A tier is Jett. Jett is incredibly strong, and she isn't going anywhere in pro play. In ranked play, she's still going to see a substantial amount of play as well, and a lot of Jett mains are just going to learn to adapt, and they're going to keep playing the same character. In pro play, while she's going to be way weaker at opping in particular, for most other things, she's going to be just as strong with slight alterations to their playstyle. Pro players typically try to think a little bit more than your average Jett player, so I think they'll be fine with a new change that forces you to think a little bit more. That being said, Jett is still overall weaker, and I do think that there are other duelist options that could become slightly more appealing, thus bringing her down from the S tier, slightly down to the top of A tier. Still really strong, but now there's a little bit more room for experimentation rather than Jett just being something that basically hated out any other duelist from seeing play. The next up, we gotta talk about the S tier, and of course, the first one in the S tier is Sova. Sova is still completely nuts. He's very powerful. Yes, you can't get insta-kills with your shock lineups. That wasn't even done really in pro play anyways. Yes, you have to drone closer to the choke. All you have to do is, as a team, clear more angles or push up yourself, clear the angles, and then drone. While that is annoying for ranked play, especially solo queue, it doesn't make or break the character, and your recon still works entirely the same, plus your ultimate still very powerful. Sova is still the go-to character in the game, will be very, very played in both ranked and pro play, and any meta that we're in is still going to be centered around Sova somewhat, so he still stays in the S tier. But the true winner in 4.08, the true winner right now in Valorant, is none other than Chamber. Chamber has a 70% pick rate. He's completely nuts right now. He is so powerful, and it's not even close. In pro play, he's seeing almost ubiquitous play on every single team on almost every map. And if we talk about ranked play, he's definitely an S tier agent here. Especially with Jett's nerfs making her a much more inferior opper, opping in ranked is one of the most powerful things that you can do that just guarantees free win after win, and Chamber gets to do that. Basically, not only just uses the weapon itself better, but he also gets his own operator that has a crazy fast fire time. Now, I already stated how Chamber is slated for nerfs coming soon, and it's unclear whether or not the nerfs that they are going to do to his alarms are going to be enough to even move him almost at all. I think that he is so powerful that it's going to be pretty hard to remove him from his throne without substantial nerfs. But definitely let me know what you think about Chamber. Do you main him? Do you love him? And if you would change him, what would you do? And let me know if there's any character here that you think is a silent winner that maybe wasn't ranked so high, but deserves it. I want to hear your opinion about all that down below. And go to the GameLeap website for tips, tricks, guides, and so much. If you want to absolutely pop off and dominate, do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below.